Zephyr insisted that he should handle the task alone and urged his companions to leave, but they were resolute in their decision to stay and finish it together. They argued that since they had come this far, they wanted to see it through as a team. Zephyr relented and assigned each of them a specific role. With determination, Zephyr ventured into the lair of the fearsome Spider Queen, guarded by a special unit of night spiders whose sole duty was to protect their queen. From his pack, Zephyr retrieved several bags of ordinary flour and scattered them towards the queen's guardians. In the blink of an eye, he readied his crossbow and fired an arrow at the spiders. The ensuing explosion of flames within the thick cloud of flour triggered a chain reaction, a principle akin to a magical spell known as a dust explosion. However, the spiders were far from fragile and began chasing Zephyr. He ran while shooting poison-tipped arrows at them, causing the creatures to scream in pain. Just before Zephyr left the scene, he displayed a pouch he had obtained from one of the spiders. Inside it were the web-producing spiders. He explained how to use these webs to set traps and instructed his comrades to stay on guard as they awaited his return. Inside the queen's chamber, the sheer volume of spider webs made it clear that fighting within would be futile. Their strategy was to lure the queen out, using one of the spider knights ensnared in the web that the party had laid as bait. Zephyr took a previously broken spider leg and began assaulting the spider knight, which soon provoked the queen herself. The queen relentlessly pursued Zephyr, eager to consume him whole. As Zephyr made a desperate dash for the cave's entrance, the queen unleashed a poison attack. Miraculously, he narrowly evaded the poison and leaped out of the cave with the queen hot on his heels. Zephyr swiftly instructed his companions to commence their attack. Armed with spider legs in both hands, he led the charge, serving as the frontline tank, while the rest of the party focused on dealing damage to the queen. Goatee informed the group that the queen's outer shell was the only heavily armored part, while the interior consisted of a complex network of nerves. With a knife in hand, he thrust it into the queen's leg, relentlessly hammering away, until he had effectively destroyed its inner structure. Meanwhile, Dale coated his blade with the poison Zephyr had provided, eagerly anticipating his chance, yet oblivious to the queen's stinger quickly approaching him. Fortunately, Zephyr intervened, delivering a powerful blow to the queen's head, causing her to miss her attack. He adeptly blocked every assault aimed at him, while the other members struggled to keep up with his actions. As Zephyr had earlier explained, the queen spider tended to remain stationary upon landing, primarily residing in the breeding room to lay her eggs. This habit limited her back leg movement, rendering the space behind her legs a relatively safe zone, as her attacks were predominantly directed forward. Once the poison began to course through her body, the queen erupted into a fit of rage. Zephyr, seizing an opportune moment, lunged forward into the queen's abdomen. There, he located the poison gland in her neck, extracting it and securing it with his belt. This action rendered the queen incapable of utilizing her poisonous attacks for approximately 5 minutes. Zephyr then scaled her arm and leaped onto her head, delivering a shocking blow that left her momentarily stunned. In the end, they successfully vanquished the Spider Queen, with Dale being the sole observer who recognized that Zephyr had intentionally allowed them to take the lead. This realization made Dale appreciate the extent of Zephyr's strength. As they gazed upon the lifeless queen's body, Zephyr contemplated how to eliminate any trace of her presence. He decided to bring the larger spider's corpses back to Rose as proof of their victory. Unexpectedly, Dale unrolled a carpet, offering Zephyr a chance to rest while he handled the aftermath. Zephyr pondered the idea of working with the two of them more in the future, realizing that conserving his energy for future challenges would be beneficial. However, he acknowledged that they wouldn't be able to assist him in facing the trials that lay ahead. Back at the temple, Rose conducted a transaction with a buyer interested in acquiring the predator's corpse. It was a peculiar sight to witness a clandestine deal within the sacred confines of the temple during broad daylight. Zephyr reflected on the fact that not everyone viewed temples as entirely holy places, free from corruption. He explained that the donations from worshippers had led to the construction of entire cities around temples, thanks to the temple knights and battle slaves who safeguarded these areas from monster incursions. Walking together, Rose remarked on their fortune, in securing a good price for the predator's remains, but admitted that she had not anticipated Zephyr's swift return with black spiders. As a gesture of gratitude, she presented him with a silver alchemist set for future use. Suddenly, Ned emerged from the shadows, calling out to them. It was revealed that Ned was one of only 12 Class 1 examiners, a highly skilled individual recognized by the temple as the direct superior of Sahat. His presence made Rose anxious. Ned attempted to take Rose aside for a private conversation, but Zephyr intervened. Ned commented on Zephyr's apparent good relationship with Sahat, to which Zephyr provocatively responded that his memory was not great and he couldn't remember unimportant people. Their exchange escalated into a clash of auras, each emanating their own distinct strength, causing Rose to panic as she witnessed the potent magical energy radiating from their confrontation. It became evident to her that Zephyr was not just an ordinary battle slave. He was on par with the Temple Knights, if not stronger. Though Ned hadn't intended to fight, he decided to indulge in a bit of fun. They both prepared to strike each other, but Rose, utilizing her temple authority, ordered them to kneel. Bound by the stigma of their slave engravings, they had to obey those marked by the followers of the light, which included Rose. Rose slapped Zephyr, demanding to know who he thought he was for challenging Ned. She then led Zephyr away, stating that she needed to teach him a lesson. As they walked away, she warned Ned that Zephyr was her toy, and that any interference would result in Ned's demise. In a quieter location, Rose explained that Zephyr couldn't simply fight everyone around him. She also expressed her concern about Ned's dangerous nature, as she was still visibly shaken. She then offered an apology for slapping Zephyr and cautioned him to be careful, as her protection wouldn't extend beyond the temple's boundaries. Zephyr, however, brushed off her concern and noted that he had only greeted Ned, implying that Rose couldn't do much if Ned decided to act against him. He then departed for the laboratory, leaving Rose behind. Meanwhile, Ned was in a foul mood, resenting the reminder of the power of the engravement. He recalled his time with his master, who had insisted that he undergo the slave engravement, even though he had initially resisted. His master explained that their fellow infiltrators within the temple had been exposed and executed. To maintain their cover, the demon god worshippers had to bear the engravement so as not to arouse suspicion among the followers of the light. His master had mentioned the existence of a way to nullify the mark, but Ned had decided to wait for the right moment. In a distant village, Sahat, now fully recovered, arrived and inquired about the local population, learning that there were approximately 50 people in the vicinity. He used a red flute, summoning a demon that swiftly attacked the unsuspecting villagers. As the demon feasted on the people, Sahat reveled in the carnage, believing that his newfound power would enable him to exact revenge on Zephyr. In the laboratory, Zephyr meticulously combined various ingredients, including the Spider Queen's poison, to create Poison King's number 61. He asked for Rose's assistance as he marked something on a piece of wood from the Arkan tree, a substance as durable as metal. Rose was uncertain about Zephyr's intentions with this item. Once he had finished marking the wood, Zephyr used his mana to punch the log, splitting it into needles. These needles were known as acupuncture needles and were used for medical purposes in the East. Zephyr dipped them into 2 different poisons for a duration of 10 minutes. He explained that poison was often underestimated as a tool for simply killing someone with minimal effort. However, in a world where the gods had stripped the demon race of their power during an invasion, humanity had come to rely on poisons for their defense. Zephyr then swiftly inserted a bunch of needles into his hand, experiencing intense pain despite being the creator of the poison. The agony spread throughout his body as the poison coursed through his veins. Despite the excruciating pain, Zephyr crossed his legs and began cultivating. By circulating his magical power, he could quell the poison, potentially advancing his stats to the next stage. However, failure meant his physical body would shatter into pieces. To Zephyr, this wasn't a crisis. It wasn't even pain, considering his past life experiences battling Ned to the death and facing the demon god with no power. Several hours later, in the northern forest near the Temple of Light, a magical flare shot high into the sky. A group of hunters was being pursued by a pack of monstrous creatures they couldn't handle. One by one, the hunters fell prey to bird-like monsters. The last surviving hunter had a long journey to reach the temple, and he knew he had only a few minutes left. As the birds closed in on him, a dagger struck one of them from above, and a star-like meteor descended toward the hunter, creating a massive explosion. It was Zephyr, who had successfully tempered his physical body, as mana radiated from his form. The flock of monsters turned their attention to him, but he had become significantly stronger. Zephyr effortlessly twisted and tore apart one bird's neck as if it were made of paper. Surveying the remaining monsters that had emerged from the dungeon, he counted 12 birds. Zephyr executed 12 consecutive attacks, each striking down one of the remaining birds. After dispatching the creatures, he asked the surviving hunter about the dungeon's location, which the man indicated. Zephyr wasted no time and headed there. The survivor of the hunting party regretted revealing the dungeon's location to Zephyr, as 4 of his comrades had perished inside, and only 3 had managed to escape, leaving him as the lone survivor. He wished he had warned Zephyr of the dungeon's danger and waited for reinforcements. To his surprise, horrifying screams echoed from the dungeon. It sounded like a massacre was unfolding within its depths. At sunrise, Zephyr emerged from the dungeon, dragging the head of the boss creature with him. He marveled at how light his body felt, indicating that his stats had increased 2- or 3-fold. His experiments had proven successful. Following this, he launched a green flare into the sky, signaling that the emergency crisis had been resolved. On the other hand, Sahat continued his ruthless campaign, moving from one village to another, determined to exact his revenge on Zephyr when he reached a certain level of power. A few days later, news of Zephyr's solo extermination of an uncontrollable cockatrice nest, including a colossal 30-meter boss, reached the highest echelons of the temple. Matthias, the senior heresy examiner of the 3rd Division, informed Lucius, the head of the Temple Knights, about the incident, highlighting that both field investigations and survivors' testimonies corroborated Zephyr's extraordinary actions. Zephyr was making himself increasingly attractive for participation in the upcoming raid, scheduled for about 20 days from now. Matthias suggested that they investigate Zephyr to ascertain whether he might be a demon god worshipper. However, Lucius decided against it, stating that as long as the worshipper was useful to them, they would employ them, as a thorough investigation wouldn't be feasible. Matthias was concerned that the worshipper might steal from the temple, which was why Lucius had enlisted them for dungeon expeditions. Inside the temple, Lucius stored the Spear of Brilliant Light and the Winged Shield of Michael, having expended a significant portion of his wealth to acquire these items. He reassured Matthias that, with these artifacts, he would be invincible in the upcoming raid. Back at the barracks, the trio finished cleaning themselves when Rose approached. They greeted her with bows, and she playfully reminded them to repay their debts promptly. They were curious about Rose, the demon's sister, emerging from their room. Zephyr was seen wearing a new ring that she had probably given him, and they questioned him about it. Zephyr explained that it was a ring of purification, which improved his mana circulation, enhanced his magic defense, and allowed him to use a skill called Curse Removal once a day. Rose offered to procure anything Zephyr might need, and he eagerly accepted, feeling fired up. Rose had heard about the ring from an informant in the black market, an assassin guild called Persephone. These legendary assassins were known for using poisons to boost their stats, possessed remarkable martial arts skills, and were experts in using deadly toxins. Rose pieced together that their incredible hunting skills and body enhancement through poison aligned with Zephyr's abilities. It turned out that Zephyr's customer was an assassin from Persephone. Following internal conflict, the guild had fallen into ruin a few years ago, but high nobles who had been their customers were searching for survivors and the potent poisons they used. These nobles were willing to spend vast sums to obtain the best talent and poisons. Rose believed in supporting Zephyr to the fullest to make him her own, though her intentions were significantly misunderstood by Zephyr. Zephyr saw Rose's misunderstanding as an opportunity for his old friend to find him. However, Goethe also seemed to misunderstand the situation, thinking that Zephyr had a close relationship with Rose. Suddenly, there was a knock on their door, and Dale checked, but the hallway was empty except for a piece of paper sticking to the wall. It contained an emergency order for Goethe's group. Goethe wondered who had delivered the secret invitation, but Zephyr recognized the signature and content as Ned's doing. He informed the group that he would go alone. Wearing a hunter's robe, Zephyr sprinted with remarkable speed toward the designated location. The Temple Knight's raid was scheduled in about 20 days. Zephyr explained that the raid would take place in the tomb of the abominable princess, one of the 8 riddles of the world, a ruin from the ancient kingdom of Medea. This dungeon had posed an extreme challenge for over a decade, with no one reaching the boss room. The criteria for raid participation rights were complex, requiring either membership in a hunting team ranked 5th or higher for the past year, direct servitude to a priest confirmed for participation, or a recommendation letter from a direct slave. Zephyr's team had no chance to accumulate enough achievements to reach the 5th rank. Therefore, he planned to use Ned, who served Matthias, the heresy examiner, to secure a recommendation letter and enter the raid party. Ned would be compelled to assess Zephyr's strength since they both practiced the same martial arts. Zephyr thought that if he was a force that Ned deemed necessary, he must be strong. However, the one who welcomed Zephyr was not Ned but Sahat, who confronted him for daring to come alone. Zephyr expressed his disinterest in playing with Sahat and questioned why he was there.